how's your lineup looking? You probably have some key decisions to make before Sunday. Well, this video will help you. Here are 12 players you must start week 5. Starting with James Robinson, who needs to be in your lineups. You see, Robinson this week takes on the Houston Texans, who rank 31st, second to worst in run defense. And not only that, they allow the most fantasy points to opposing running backs. They're giving up over 26 points per week to the running back position. Good news for James Robinson. Now, it gets even better for Robinson. Check this out. Robinson is a 7-point favorite this week, and in his career with the Jaguars, he hasn't been a favorite all that much because the Jaguars haven't been that great until now. And now here's what Robinson has done in his career when he's a favorite. And this is pretty cool. It hasn't been many games, but in a 4-game sample as a favorite, he averages 22 fantasy points per game and over 19 opportunities per game. He is basically one of the best running backs in the league when he's a favorite and gets more touches. So translation, you want to start him and this next running back immediately. And beautiful people, you want to be starting Ramandre Stevenson this week. You see, he's facing the Detroit Lions, who have a bottom 5 run defense, and they are bottom 5 in tackling, and that's a key point. Let's discuss. Ramandre is fantastic at breaking tackles. Here's what I mean. He is literally number 1 in the NFL with 39 evaded tackles this year. And by the way, he's splitting a backfield with Damian Harris. It's not like he's seeing 70 or 80% of the opportunities. He is number 1 at breaking tackles while splitting the touches. So you can expect multiple big plays from Stevenson, but it gets even better because the Lions are allowing the second most fantasy points per game, over 25 per game to the opposing running backs. Good news for Stevenson. And they allow the most yards after contact. And Ramandre ranks top 5 in yards after contact this season. Start him and this wide receiver. And that would be rookie wide receiver Drake London, who did indeed have a tough week 4. He ended up seeing by far his toughest matchup of the year, going up against Denzel Ward in the Cleveland Browns, and Ward held him to just 3.7 fantasy points. However, we need to add some context here because this is skewed. And the reason it's skewed is the Falcons and Mariota only threw 19 times this past week, but Drake London still saw 7 of those targets, over 30%, which means he now earns 40% of Atlanta's targets, the 3rd highest target share in the NFL. And here's another way to look at this. In 2021, Devonte Adams led the entire NFL, earning 35% of the Packers' targets. And Drake London is currently exceeding that. Reminder, he's a rookie. Now, we can't ignore the fact that he does have a tough matchup. The Buccaneers rank 2nd in coverage this year, but the volume and the fact that they'll be trailing and having to throw more in this game makes up for it for London. Start him. And play this Kansas City wide receiver. Now, stay with me here, but start Marquez Valdes-Scantling this week. And a lot of this has to do with 2 things. He's attached to Patrick Mahomes and this offense looks fantastic, and his matchup against the Raiders for 2 reasons. 1, overall, their secondary ranks 24th in the NFL. But number 2, and more importantly, they're notorious for playing just 1 safety high. Most defenses now, especially against a powerful offense, will play 2 safeties to take away the big plays. And this is what MVS has seen all season. Tampa Bay last week plays 2 safeties. The Colts have famously played 2 safeties, and you can see from the Chargers and the Cardinals, which takes away the big play upside of MVS. And Patrick Mahomes has already 4 deep attempts per game this year, and expect more in this game when there's going to be a lot more one-on-one matchups. So start MVS in your flex and then play this RB. And that would be Packers running back A.J. Dillon, who honestly is seeing a fantastic role. Right now in a split backfield, he is still earning 17.5 opportunities per game between his carries and his targets. Now week 5, he has a strong matchup. See for yourself. Dillon's going to face the New York Giants run defense that ranks 24th. This is going to be your London morning game, but it gets even better. Let's break down into a little bit more, beautiful people, the context here of why they're this bad, the Giants. And specifically this bad when we're talking about run defense. They allow 1.41 yards before contact this season, which means that Dillon's going to get a lot of easy yards in this game. This is a bottom 10 rate in the league for the Giants run defense, and Dillon breaks a lot of tackles, so you can expect easy yards in week 5 for Dillon. So start A.J. Dillon and his teammate. And that would be wide receiver Romeo Dobbs, who has been fantastic in his rookie year. He has now played 92% of the team snaps these last 2 weeks. He's ran 32 routes per week, and it has led to 16 targets, 8 per week. 3 targets have been called back by penalties, so actually 19 targets so far, and these targets are highly valuable. And what I mean by highly valuable targets is they're either downfield or they're in the red zone. Because for fantasy, those are the targets that lead to consistent upside. And so far this year, basically has only played 2 games as a starter. Week 1, 30% of the snaps. Week 2, just 50% of the snaps. So 2 games as a starter basically already has 5 red zone targets and 2 deep targets. An easy way to translate all of this is to say that Aaron Rodgers clearly trusts Romeo Dobbs. So consider starting him every week, and definitely this week, and then play this AFC wide receiver. And that's the Jacksonville Jaguars wide receiver 1, the man who got the big money this offseason, in Christian Kirk. And Christian Kirk had his worst game of the year last year, scoring just 8.3 fantasy points, 2 catches, 60 yards. But here's the big thing. He still earns 9 targets in this game. And the reason why he doesn't pop off for another 100-plus yard game and he looks fantastic is because the Jaguars-Eagles game last week had bad weather. It was really difficult to complete passes, hence why he only caught 2 balls on 9 targets. Now, Kirk's usage this season has been absolutely elite. 9 targets per game with highly valuable targets. And I'm talking about the cheat code targets at the wide receiver position, the red zone and the deep targets. He now has 10 targets that are either in the red zone or downfield. downfield. And keep in mind, he didn't see downfield targets more last week because of the weather. So he's a great player to even buy low in terms of trades, but definitely start him this week and this running back. And based off of last week, you're likely starting him, but if you had any questions, start Josh Jacobs, not just this week, but every single week, because he is now officially one of the elite fantasy backs in the league. And the proof is in the pudding. Right now, he has the third highest opportunity share, 84% amongst all running backs in the NFL. He is literally right now a first-round fantasy pick based on the way he's being used and the way that he's producing. The crazy part is it's getting better literally every week. Check this out. Jacobs has seen his targets, his routes, and his overall usage increase every week. But the big thing here, over these last 2 weeks, he's being the main third down running back in passing situations. 23 and 27 routes. He's seen 6 targets each week, 11 red zone touches. This is all fantastic usage. And the other thing is that the Raiders offense is starting to move the ball better. They'll get Hunter Renfrow back this week, which means even more touchdowns are in the cards for Jacobs. There's like 2 or 3 other running backs in the entire league that are seeing this type of usage. Start Jacobs every week and this wide receiver. And that's the Commanders wide receiver, Curtis Samuel. You want to play him. He's coming off of his worst game of the year. He ends up seeing just 7.8 fantasy points, but still has 4 catches, 38 yards, and he earns 7 targets. So another solid outing. Just didn't translate to overall points, but here's what you need to know. Samuel on the season leads this team with 37 targets, borderline top 10 in the NFL, 9.3 per game, which is 10 more than the next closest receiver on the Commanders, who is Terry McLaurin. Samuel is going to find himself in a nice matchup against the Titans this week, specifically Roger McCreary, who allows 82% of the passes thrown his way to be caught this year, and in 3 straight games, he's allowed 5+ catches in coverage. Big upside for Samuel here. So set Samuel in your lineups and then play this RB. And that's the 49ers running back Jeff Wilson. You got to get as much out of him as you can before Elijah Mitchell returns, and he's been quietly dominant. Now, Wilson didn't really take over the full backfield until week 3. He kind of split the touches with Terry and Davis Price in week 2. Elijah Mitchell was active for part of week 1. Even with all of that, not really being a full-time back for 2 weeks now, he has top 10 in running back opportunity share this week. That's how elite his role has been. He's top 5 the last 2 weeks. So much so that no other running back saw a touch last week. Yes, the fullback Kyle Juszczyk did, but no other running back did. And now check this out. The 49ers come into this game as 6.5 and 7-point favorites, depending on where you're looking. In Wilson's career, when he's a favorite as a starter, he averages 14.1 fantasy points per game and over 17.5 touches per game. This is basically top 10 running back usage. So consider starting him and grabbing the fantasy cheat sheet, which if you don't win your league, if you don't win your fantasy league, the cheat sheet material becomes free. It's a one-time payment of just $10 to help you win your league and beat your friends. Again, if you don't win, it becomes free. If you'd like to join the thousands of other people using the cheat sheet to try and win their leagues, well, then you can click the link in the description to learn more. And then you also want to start this rookie every single week. And that's Chris Olave, who needs to be in every single one of your lineups. He leads the NFL in deep targets with 3.3 per game right now, and in air yards, by far in air yards, meaning most of his targets are coming downfield with a lot of upside. But there's even more good news here, because as a rookie, he's producing early on, which is rare, and he's producing with multiple different quarterbacks, which is rare. In 3 games with Jameis Winston, 15.6 fantasy points. Andy Dalton comes in for 1 game, still the wide receiver 1 there with 16.7 fantasy points. You can trust him despite his quarterback. He's a top 20 wide receiver this week easily for me. Play him and this RB. And that's Bills running back Devin Singletary, who finds himself in a great spot. The Bills are 14-point favorites this week, which for running backs notoriously means more touches, more touchdown opportunities, and overall usage. And as a favorite in his career when he's a starter, Devin Singletary averages 13.5 fantasy points per game and 17.3 touches per game. This is borderline top 10 usage. And now his role is literally better than we've ever seen it, because last week he played 87% of the snaps and saw 80% of the running back opportunities, including 5 more targets. His 16 targets over the last 2 weeks are second in the NFL at the running back position, behind only Breece Hall. This is elite usage. So make sure you start Singletary this week. Now you also have to avoid the potential landmines who are going to ruin your lineup this week. You got to sit them. And to see who those 12 players are, well, then check out this lovely video right here. And if you're one of the 60% of people who is not subscribed, I appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button.